Approximately 10:30 a.m. local time on the island of Guam, one of the most powerful aircraft in the world was in deep trouble moments after takeoff. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, known as Spirit of Kansas, baffled the two pilots in the plane's cockpit as it began to inexplicably descend back to Earth. The crew struggled in an attempt to regain control of the doomed bomber, but its left wing clipped the runway, and both pilots were ejected. One suffered a spinal injury, but thankfully, there were no casualties. The incident was over in a matter of seconds, but it left behind a $2 billion receipt, making it the most expensive airplane crash in history. A B-2, capable of leveling entire cities and wreaking apocalyptic destruction, had been brought down by nothing more than a simple change in the weather. The crash would prove that, despite all of humankind's power, Mother Nature always has the last word. Everyone involved knew the flight was going to be a long one. The B-2 bomber, known as Spirit of Kansas, had spent for months on the island territory of Guam as part of U.S. Pacific Command's Bomber Forward Presence mission. For B-2 South had been deployed to Andersen Air Force Base as a deterrent to North Korea and China. For the 4 bomber crews and the maintenance that had followed them from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, February 23rd was the day they got to go home. The plane was scheduled to take off that morning as part of a 2-ship formation with another bomber. The flight back home to Missouri was set to be a grueling one, more than 16 hours long and involving 2 aerial refuelings. The 2 pilots loaded their personal equipment, classified information, and long-duration crew comfort equipment, once described by a B-2 pilot as reclining beach chairs for sleeping aboard the aircraft. The crew started the engines and began working through their pre-flight checklists. Once both pilots and ground crew were satisfied the plane was ready, the B-2 taxied to a position on Andersen's runway. Unknown to the pilots and the B-2's computer brain, Guam's high humidity had caused the plane's air data system to receive faulty information. The plane's altitude on the ground read as 682 feet, a difference of 136 feet from the real ground elevation, but the crew, on temporary assignment from Missouri, didn't know any better and didn't catch the error. As the plane began rolling down the runway, the cockpit master caution light illuminated along with the flight control system warning light. Then they both disappeared 6 seconds later. The co-pilot investigated the issue and quickly concluded the fault had cleared. The plane was still go for takeoff. 21 seconds later, the pilot initiated takeoff, pulling the plane's nose into a climb. What the pilots did not know was that the plane's port transducer units (PTUs), the same sensors that had generated bad altitude data, were also misreporting the plane's airspeed. The PTUs dutifully reported the plane rolling down the runway at 163 miles per hour. A safe takeoff speed, instead of 151 to 154 miles per hour, not a safe takeoff speed. As the bomber's wheels lost contact with the ground, the B-2's automatic flight control system, FCS, acting on faulty data, believed the plane was actually in a steep dive. In order to avoid what it believed to be an imminent crash, the FCS initiated a steep nose-up 30-degree climb and action that guaranteed a crash. The plane's low speed, heavy, fuel-laden weight status, and momentum could not sustain a climb, and the plane began to sink. Pilot No. 1 tried to regain control of the aircraft, but it was unrecoverable, according to the accident report. The bomber's left wingtip struck the runway, and the pilots instantly ejected, leaving the plane to sink to the ground, crash, and burn. Airbase personnel swiftly recovered the 2 pilots. Pilot No. 1 received only minor injuries, while Pilot No. 2 suffered compression fractures in his spine as a result of the ejection process, eventually making a full recovery. The wreckage of the former Spirit of Kansas burned for 6 hours, and bits of aircraft were spread over a field of more than 4 acres. An investigation of the accident laid the blame on faulty data, leading the flight control system to make wrong decisions, like many modern aircraft. The B-2 is a fly-by-wire aircraft that uses flight computers and an electronic interface instead of traditional mechanical flight control systems. The flight system makes decisions on how the plane should fly based on data pulled from sensors across the aircraft, including environmental systems such as the port transducer units (PTUs). Like any decision-making process, the final call is only as good as the information it's based on.